expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
And welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out. That's right, coming to you from Australia. Still, that's right, on revolution.radio. Now, if you can donate, please do this. This is Listener Funded Radio. If you see us out in the wild, please ping, comment, like, subscribe. That'd be awesome. And watch more. Share is good. Sharing is really, really good. Our views on YouTube Shorts look like a jagged jawline of a shark. That's what it looks like a jagged jawline of a shark. But yeah, so if you can do all of those things, that would be wonderful. We are talking about the hypothesis at the moment. We'll probably talk about that, and we'll probably talk about some of the current affairs as well still, because there's just too much going on, and some of the topics that we discuss here we'll try to make more immediate and bring more to the current day, and draw the bow as to how it affects you and so forth. So if I can ask you, Dave, what page did we get up to?
We are about to say, and our guests have included Jim Mars, Jose Escamilla, wow. Lauren Eisenhauser, Solaris, Lloyd Pye, Kerry Cassidy, Ole Domagard, Dane Wigington, I think it's double G. I was going to put that in. Stan Deo, Bill Bryson, Stanton Friedman, but just to name a few.
We've been lucky. We've interviewed many of my, idols and heroes, many of Dave's persons of interest. Some have since passed away, much to the detriment of the rest of us, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But it was great to be able to talk to them. Now, that's actually really so. The next part of the hypothesis is actually fitting extremely well into the current discussion of things. And let's start with one of the fundamental questions of our existence, right? And this is really what the next part is. Why do we die? Why do we die? Most of us believe that death is just part of the natural order of things, and our lifespan, seemingly limited to 100 years, is all we get. But what if this were entirely false, and the truth was much more sinister? It seems that we have a built-in kill switch, or in fact, kill switches. The most prominent, of course, being the cessation of telomerase production. Now, before we go on, recently, I think it was a hot mic situation when I think Xi Jinping and Putin discussed longevity day.
That's right.
Right?
They were talking about organ transplants being able to live for 20,000 years.
Now, the truth is this, and we'll talk about the science behind it in just a moment. Now, should we be surprised that these autocratic leaders are interested in extending their lives? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because that's what autocratic leaders do. They want to stay in power for as long as humanly possible. Can you imagine a world where Putin, Xi Jinping, and Donald Trump do not die?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I've already imagined that. How good would that be? Remember Sleeper? Remember Sleeper, the movie, when there was the silhouette of the leader up on the precipice in a wheelchair, of all places. Uh-huh. And it was a silhouette, and it was hundreds of years after he died that it was found out. Yeah. Yeah.
Not great.
We're not far from it.
Not great. So, but the truth is that as we are advancing in various fields of scientific endeavor, nanotechnology, biotechnology, genetic manipulation, robotics, AI, and general, I guess, information technology advances where storage and compute power is getting to the point where it is almost incomprehensible. We're getting close to a point where death, it will only be, I guess, optional, I guess, for some people. Now, we'll get into the theories and aging and all that in a second. I think it's much more important at the moment, Dave, to discuss why we are where we are. So, some tens of thousands of years ago, maybe it was 15 or 14,000 years ago, maybe it was before that, the lifespan of the human that we are, was reduced significantly to what we have today, from hundreds, if not thousands of years to what we have today. The king lists of the Sumerians, the Egyptians, list the reign of the god kings, like the call them aliens if you want, call them extra-dimensional creatures, I don't care what you call them, but the Anunnaki, etc. And they ruled for tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands, of years. That's a long time. And when we read this initially, back when these tablets were first translated into the modern languages, English, German, French, etc., people, what a lot of crock. This is clearly all fantasy. What if it were not fantasy? What if these creatures lived indeed for tens, hundreds, or even millions of years? Right? And there's an interesting movie that came out, which didn't really do well at the box office, which I found surprising. It was called, I think it was called Jupiter Ascending, or some such. Jupiter. Yeah, it was definitely. Right. It was one of the. Yeah, it was the same people that made the Matrix trilogy, or which is now not a trilogy anymore. It's now a quintilogy, I think. Oh, it doesn't matter. But the point is this: the premise of the movie was, Jupiter Ascending. That was it. There was this girl, the daughter of Russian immigrants in the United States, very poor, clean toilets for a living, and then one night she gets abducted. And it turns out that she's the exact genetic match for this alien person who had just been killed. And for them, for the alien civilization, that meant that she would now inherit whatever that alien person had. It happened to own vast tracts of wealth, including the solar system and more specifically the Earth. So she owned the Earth now, for all intents and purposes. And what they did, they had discovered a method of becoming immortal, really. And the way they did it was to extract some substance from the human body and then, just inject it or bathe in it or drink it or whatever you do with it. And then you would, your cells would renew and you would be young again. So if you were old, this thing would give you a cellular renewal. And the person that had died was over 100,000 years old. And the people that she dealt with, her children, this is the Earth girl, were in their tens of thousands of years. Of course, still young looking because they had this substance. And the funny thing is this, right? It is very much in line what the Anunnaki stories tell us about the longevity of these creatures. And apparently, according to the movie, this is again movie lore, right? The human race had evolved 1 billion years ago on some distant planet, and they had since spread across the galaxy and populated it and had built these farm planets. Like the Earth is a farm planet. It doesn't belong to the Galactic Federation, if you will, right? It is just, I guess, think of it as a corral full of sheep. Maybe, and that's why our religions were, that never really came out in the movie, but, you could have drawn the boat to that all our religions talk about us as being a flock. And we need attending to it. And clearly, that's what it is. And there would be a harvest in 100 or 150 years' time, they tell her, and all human life would be extinguished to essentially extract whatever the substance is that we extract out of human bodies to let us live forever. But my point here is this. While it didn't do well in the box office, it touched on a lot of things that rang true. And the Wachowski sisters, as they are now,
I know,
did the same thing with the Matrix movie, right? the Matrix was very, very similar. The very first one touched on a lot of things where you go, hey, yeah, hang on, right? So these are clearly, the sisters are clearly plugged into, the observational nature of our lives, and they know the philosophy, and they also have the same questions as Dave and I. Now, if you can make the leap, and if you watch the movie, it might make it easier for you to make the leap, that indeed we could live beyond the allotted 100 years, right? And we could achieve it today. The technology exists. Now, if a brick falls on your head, or you got a car accident, or someone shoots you, you will still cease to be, right? That's just how it is. But aging, old age, age-related diseases and decline, we can arrest today. And Dave, I want to say one thing before we go to the text, and this is the one thing, we'll talk about it in the text some more, but it really bothers me. And I'm going to put my point of view forward, and then I'd like you to comment on it. So, in your body, you've got DNA strands. So they're in every cell. You've got DNAs as part of every cell that we have in our body, and these DNA molecules or strands are tightly coiled up, in a double helix. And at the end of the strand, if you will, is what we call or are the telomeres. The telomeres used to be called junk DNA. We now don't think it is junk DNA anymore. In fact, it serves a very important purpose. And one of the most important purposes it serves is to protect the rest of the DNA strand from corruption, from failure to copy well, etc., etc. Now, it does it by having a certain length. So as the copying process goes on, the telomere length decreases normally, right? As you do cellular reproduction, every 7 years, you're a brand new person. So your cells are constantly dying and constantly regenerating, right? That's what happens in our body. Now, what telomerase does, it coats telomeres and protects them during the copying process. A function it gives up in our mid-20s for most people, except in two places. In your mouth, three places, I should say. In your mouth, in your reproductive organs, up to a certain age again, and I think it's your lower intestine. Okay, those are the three places where telomeres stay protected by telomerase, and a lot of stem cells also flit about quite significantly, right? Why is that? Well, I think it's clear. I mean, your mouth being, of critical importance, you heal very fast in your mouth. If you didn't, you would have a huge problem, right? So clearly that's a mechanism to protect us. Interestingly, though, how it's very selective. Now, as your telomerase is switched off, it's an enzyme, by the way, your cells copy, but they no longer copy perfectly because the telomeres, again, the end bits of the DNA, are no longer protected. And each copying process shortens the telomere string and produces more and more errors in the copying process. Now, we call those errors aging. Gray hair, loss of your teeth, wrinkles, loss of vision, loss of hearing, etc., etc. So all these things that we associate with aging come about because the telomeres are no longer protected by telomerase. Okay. Now, that's if you live a clean life. Of course, there are factors like environmental pollution, drugs, alcohol, the wrong food, other toxins that can accelerate that process and damage your DNA all by themselves. Radiation can do it as well, of course. Right? I'm not saying that it's not a thing. But if you lived a healthy life in a healthy environment, you would still age. You would still age. Maybe less fast, but you would still age. So, and what happens then as the copying process becomes less and less accurate, the cells become cancerous. They become, they start to develop errors that accumulate, become so severe that cancer develops. Now, cancer can also develop through other means. When cells get damaged through radiation, they get damaged through, through all kinds of things, pollution, again, environmental factors. But when the protection of the telomerase is gone, there's a much higher likelihood that your cells would develop cancer. Now, that's my opinion, right? Because you've taken the protection away, and cells can now be damaged and can mutate. The funny thing is this: the very first thing a cell does that has become, cancerous, it switches telomerase back on. So the cancer cell is now, for all intents and purposes, immortal, right? Because it's protected during its copying process. It'll copy more and more of itself to eventually crowd out all of your organs, to eventually shut down your system, to eventually to replace all the healthy cells you have in your liver, in your lung, in your brain with cancer cells. And then you die. Now, doctors tell me that telomerase is switched off because the body is protecting itself against cancer. And this is the question I have for you, Dave, right? This logic makes absolutely no sense to me. If telomerase is there to protect the telomeres in my DNA strand from failed copying or incorrect copying, then how is switching telomerase off helping me to prevent cancer? When the very fact that the flawed copying process is now exposing me to cancer more and more as I get older. Now, I might not get it if I'm lucky, but something else might kill me before. I don't understand it. I've had the conversation with doctors, and I've never had a satisfactory answer. They always point back at this one thing that says, the body switches off telomerase in order to protect the cells against cancer. I don't get it. Right? If telomerase was still there, coating the telomeres, then why would I ever develop cancer? Of course, radiation could happen to other toxic elements, but the copying process would be perfect, or as near to perfect as possible. Plus, I wouldn't age. Right? Now you say, how about kids get cancer too? Yeah, kids get cancer too. That's right. Right? They do get cancer too, but it could be a genetic predisposition that some cells will malfunction. It could be environmental exposure. We do know that power lines or high voltage power lines, or living in a toxic waste environment or near radiation source can lead to cancer in anyone, including children. Absolutely. I'm not saying that's not true. What I'm saying is that in my mind, telomerase protects telomeres in the copying process, and if we do that, then we can avoid aging and most likely avoid for our cells to become cancers. Have I lost the plot, Dave?
No, is the quick answer.
Thank you.
I'm saying that because I'm just fixing something. Hang on a minute.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I'm just fixing the title of our show. Something really weird happened, so I'm just getting to the bottom of it. So I understand what you're saying, and I hear it. Science has a ways to catch up, but it also is obfuscating the truth of the effect, the beneficial effect of your telomerase being on, keeping you healthy, young looking, and supporting your cells by being able to replicate accurately in every single case. If you turned off error correction, for instance, in a computer system, it would become corrupted so quickly you'd never be able to use it again. It would corrupt itself as you were using it. And that's kind of the human body, if you want to think of it in that way. I'm not saying that's how it works. Mekhi, when you say it coats them, it doesn't kind of coat them. It activates the telomerase, allows for the regrowing of your telomeres, which is the junk DNA. It just extends them back to a set length. And as they replicate that set length, while it deteriorates from the length on every replication, it takes it back again. It winds the clock back. As we know, there's a shrimp on Earth and a jellyfish who never stop producing telomerase. And this is how we worked it out. This is how it was discovered. 2008 Nobel Prize for Medicine was the discovery of telomerase. It really isn't that long ago that it was discovered. And if you go to the NIH website and you type in telomerase and astragalus and top 5 as a search term, you will find 2 papers, one mega study on the effects of growing your telomerase back, which is the best combination of things to consume as a human. And there you go. And you'll be very surprised to see that the NIH have known about this since that paper was released. And they say nothing, they do nothing. If you wanted to buy TA65, which was the offshoot of the discovery of telomerase, then that'd be like $5,000 a month American money. And it's quite a lot of money. It's like $7,000 a month here in Australia. And so you can see that the market they're selling to is the premium pricing. The product does not cost anywhere near that amount. And I can see how if you lived in a place that had what was it? What was the emperor looking for? The fountain of youth, wasn't it, Meki?
Yeah, that's right.
If you came across a town where everyone looked exceptionally youthful and there was no old people and there was no great pit to throw everyone into when they hit 35, then you might have found a town like that, but then they went back and they couldn't find it again. Thinking there was a fountain or something you drank, maybe, but you could consume the minerals required that are found in astragalus. For instance, do your own research. I'm not providing any medical advice here at all. I'm putting a warning screen up just so that we're clear on what we're doing here. We're talking about longevity, for that matter. This is the theories of aging, and you can easily, I think, doctors are talking about it now, and that is be able to continue to just stretch out the good part of life, not make growing up take 100 years, to your teens, and not doing the aging bit, not extending the aging bit, because we already know that the aging bit at the end is awful. But it's the middle bit that I think is the most important. And if we can keep that part and elongate that, which is what all the doctors are talking about right now, that is where the magic is. And it was funny, yes, Meki, to hear Putin and Xi Jinping and the other fellow. Yeah, world leaders, I don't really care. So talking about it, and yes, it was a hot mic, but they could be heard talking about it by those parabolic microphones that you can pick up from a distance. That's what it was. And yeah, look, do you want to live that long? I say yes. If we actually lived that long, imagine how much society would then benefit from their long view of life. The political view is only 3 to 4 years. They don't care. They don't really want to do anything that's going to affect anyone but themselves, to be honest. It's not long enough to make any substantial change. So if we lived longer, I think the net benefit of that would be that we'd be attempting to benefit our society as a whole. to move forward. I know that we'd be having limitations about who and who couldn't reproduce, because if you lived that long, imagine how many offspring you could have. That would definitely be of great concern. But apart from that, Mackie, it's back to you in the studio.
No, look, that's the thing, right? So there's something here that people just not looking at, really, I don't think, or they're being taught a certain thing, and maybe some researchers are now, like you said, waking up to the fact. And almost every science fiction book that I pick up, hard science fiction, right? And I love science fiction, is talking about telomere therapy when it comes to longevity, right? They all talk about that in the novel, because that's where it's heading. The other things as well, of course. I mean, organ replacement is one. An organ replacement by organs that are either grown from your own stem cells, which would be ideal, or from a donor, which is a thriving business in the world at the moment. Very scary business. As well as parts of your body that can be replaced by manufactured devices, like a heart, even kidneys and things like that, where you slowly turn into a cyborg, if you will.
Well, we do hips and knees now.
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, all the mechanical parts are easy. Skeleton is easy, right? The organs are a bit more complex, of course, and certain functions, and we don't really know all of the functions and all the interrelated things that our organs do, like kidney, liver, heart, lungs, etc. But certainly, we are starting to be able to replace these things in the body. We've grown skin. We can now create undifferentiated stem cells from any cell that you might have. Any cell, we can now create stem cells. We can use these stem cells to create eggs and sperm.
That's right.
So we don't really need people anymore. We now have created artificial wombs. The ancient Sumerian birth mothers. And so it seems that the Anunnaki grew humans in them. So maybe we've come full circle in many ways. But it certainly is worth thinking about, because, yes, right now and even 10, 20 years ago, would seem fantastic to have a lifespan that is now talking about thousands of years and maybe even tens of thousands of years. In reality, it really isn't. If you could maintain a healthy, youthful body, and this is the point here, a body that doesn't age, okay, and if you could ward off, all, I guess, deteriorating diseases, if you can avoid accidents, if you can avoid assassination attempts, things of that nature, there really isn't a reason why you couldn't live, for a very long time indeed. And maybe at one point, and I think we're getting closer to that as well, when we talk about consciousness transfer or the storage of consciousness, right? Now, it's all a matter of storage capacity. Think of your brain as a storage and compute unit. That's really what it is. Now, some will argue there's more to it, and I agree with them. There's more to us than our physical makeup, and we extend into, in my opinion, we extend into the quantum realm, into other dimensions in our existence as well. But if we could replicate all of those things, if we could truly make a carbon copy of our consciousness and transfer it into whatever, right, then there's actually no reason why that consciousness couldn't live forever. Still you? That's a good question. I don't know. But the point is, we are now at the threshold of that technology. Okay. And we are speculating. Our science fiction writers are speculating. Our philosophers, our futurists are speculating along these things. Of course, the very first people that would be able to take advantage of this, Dave, would be the super rich. No question. No question about that. Right? So it's really it's a fascinating thing, and it's just, I don't know. I see a world that will be cleanly and sharply divided into various castes. The
brave new
parasitical,
world.
Yeah, very much. The parasites on top, living forever, And if you have read or watched Altered Carbon, especially the first Altered Carbon series on TV, I think that's very much a reflection of where we could be headed, right? And it's not a nice picture. It's quite, in my opinion, quite terrifying. But again, that's where we're heading. So what do we do? Honestly, I'm not sure. Other than we've got to move beyond where we are today. We can no longer live in this societal structure. It has served its purpose. Now we have to find something else. Okay. Did you want to say anything else about any of this before we
No, let's roll.
Let's roll. Okay, why don't you take us through these theories on aging?
No single theory on how or why people age is able to account for all aspects of aging, but most take one of two approaches. One, that humans are genetically programmed to age and die, and number two, that natural wear and tear causes aging and eventual death. Arguments in favour of genetic programming cite hormonal control and or limited cell division or reproduction as the mechanisms involved in the aging process. One hormonal approach focuses on the hypothalamus at the base of the forebrain, which controls the production of growth hormones, which influence growth and development. And these are found in the pituitary gland. It is thought that, possibly due to the action of a hormonal clock, the hypothalamus either slows down normal hormonal function or that it becomes more error-prone with time, leading to physiological, aging. Repeated experiments have shown that human cells grown in tissue culture in the laboratory will divide only about 50 times before they die. Exceptions are cancer cells, which have unlimited growth, and brain and muscle cells, which do not divide after birth. This suggests a genetic clock that limits how many times cells can divide. It is thought that as cell division decreases, as it does in older people, the functioning of the body also begins to slow down, resulting in aging and eventual death. The wear and tear theory of aging and death suggests that genes, the molecules that carry instructions for passing on specific traits from one generation to another, are altered by random mutations, changes in form, that accumulate over time, gradually leading to aging and disease. Environmental agents such as X-rays and ultraviolet radiation and chemical toxins can contribute to this mutation process. All cells have the ability to repair damaged DNA. The nucleic acid, the molecule basis of hereditary. But when these repair mechanisms fail, mutations can accumulate. This failure is also thought to be a factor in the development of cancer. Now, this comes from the scienceclarified.com, and I've got to say, Mekki, that view is old. Is it not?
Yeah, it is. It is. Now, these are still, believe it or not, the prevailing theory. So that's what's being taught in the colleges, if you will.
The lockstep view of aging.
Correct. So those are still the ones that are, and then that's why doctors are sort of, and they're not really. I guess they're sort of poorly informed. Let's call it, right? as you learn. So, but they're still the main ones. Of course, as we go further and further into the cancer research, into aging research, we realize that there's a lot more going on than that, and a lot of the cancers that we seem to be susceptible to are in fact infections.
Yeah, viral infections mostly.
Correct. So cancer, you can actually catch cancer. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, look, it is certainly something that we need to keep an eye on, and we'll, as we go on with the show notes, there'll be more on these theories of aging. But right now, those are the ones that are the most prevalent. Okay, and as you can see here, as Dave has shared with us, humans are genetically programmed to age and die. I think that is absolutely what happened. It is also true that there's natural wear and tear that causes aging and death. But I think even if we didn't have, wear and tear, so to speak, I still think we're genetically programmed to age and die. Well, the question is why, right?
Well, it says it in the Bible, doesn't it, Mackie? We were modified to only live 120 years.
It does, and the question then again becomes, but why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's go back before I go to the text. Let's go back to Sumerians and examine this. So I know, right? Now, according to ancient texts, we were created as a worker race because the Igigi, they were sick of digging the canals that would become the rivers of Euphrates and Tigris. And they said no more. There was a bit of a revolution, a bit of an uproar. And this lady decided to create the human race with the essence of the earth and the essence of the Anunnaki. So this was a hybrid creature with the genetic material both from the earth and from the Anunnaki. Okay.
Made in their image, Mackie.
Pretty much, but limited
in
many ways, right? And really just, meant to work. But there's, the story goes on and on and on. But at some point, they became so burdensome, so troublesome, that they decided to destroy them all. And this is where we get our flood myth from. And they called upon this flood, and one of the Anunnaki saved one of the people to make sure that the human race would not perish altogether. And then the human race was sort of rebooted, version 2.0, maybe 3 or 4.0, who knows at that point. And that's what we are today. Now, the Bible put it a lot simpler. Genesis 3:1. From every tree in the garden did he grant them to eat, save but one. And that tree in the center of the garden was called the tree of life. And the snake said to Eve, eat of this fruit and you will become as God and never die. So, the story that we're told in the Bible is that Eve the devil, I guess, tempted Eve to tempt Adam to eat from the tree of knowledge. And he did. And he became aware of many things, including his own nakedness, tried to cover himself up, etc., etc., etc. Now, God was displeased because he liked Adam and Eve in their natural, unspoiled, naive state, right? As young children might be. And he was then, said to have cast them out of Eden. But he didn't cast them out of Eden because they had eaten from the tree of knowledge. He cast them out of Eden so they wouldn't eat from the tree of life and become like God and never die. Okay, so this mythology is ancient. We've got Prometheus, Lucifer. Again, this is the Jewish, the Judeo-Christian tradition, which goes back to all the traditions. But there was always a light bringer, a fire stealer that would go to the gods and steal the fire, the light, whatever you want to call it, from the gods or God and give it to the humans. And of course, my opinion is that in this context, light and fire are equated to knowledge.
Because that's enlightenment.
Correct. And that's really the crux of it. So we now knew things. We're no longer ignorant. Right? We had been taught. But we were removed from the source of everlasting life. right? And that's why we're kicked out of Eden. And I think after the flood, the human race that emerged was further cut down in years to, let's say, 120, 150 maximum, right? Depending on the life you lived. And that was it. Rather than our full lifespan, whatever that might be. Now let's look at how we've developed over the last few centuries. In 1786, the average life expectancy was 24 years, thereabouts. 24 years, right? That's how long you could, the majority, not everybody, obviously. Some people lived longer, right? That's, of course, true. 100 years later, though, in 1886, it doubled to 48 years. Right now, and when I say right now, this text was written 10, 12 years ago. So 12 years ago, the average life expectancy was 76 years. Now, this is for the United States. But, again, with recent discoveries in biology, many scientists predict that life expectancy will continue to triple digits. In fact, if they're correct, humans shouldn't have to die at all in the future. Okay, this is now, there's a quote here from Dr. Ronald Klutz of the American Academy of Anti-Aging. Over half the baby boomers here in America are going to see their 100th birthday and beyond in excellent health. We are looking at lifespans for the baby boomers, the duration after the baby boomers of 100 to 150 years, 120 to 150 years of age. A further quote from Dr. Klutz. Anti-aging medicine is not about stretching out the last years of life. It is about stretching out the middle years of life and actually compressing those last few years of life so that diseases of aging happen very, very late in life, just before death, or don't happen at all. Of course, and this is really the point here. I mean, you don't want to live to 1,000 or 10,000 and be riddled with diseases and arthritis and dementia. What's the point, right? What's the point? No point. What you want is to have a healthy life, a productive life, a youthful life. That's what you want. The cause of what we now call aging, or what we call aging, is now being understood. We're now in the process of actually understanding it. Immortality has silently been revealing itself to scientists like Dr. John Langmore of the University of Michigan's Department of Biology. Dr. Langmore and his group looked inside human cells at the very essence of human life, the DNA molecule. Specifically, Dr. Langmore looked at the tips of the DNA molecule, a previously overlooked part of the double helix molecule that contain a kind of chain of repeating pairs of enzymes. Called telomeres, these molecular chains have often been compared to the blank leaders on film and recording tape. Indeed, telomeres seem to perform a similar function, Dave.
Yeah, so what exactly are telomeres? Telomeres are special, essential DNA sequences at both ends of each chromosome. Each chromosome replicate a small amount of the DNA at both ends, and when it replicates, a small part is lost by an uncertain mechanism. We don't know what causes it. Because human telomeres shortened at a much faster rate than many lower organisms, we speculate that this telomere shortening probably has a beneficial effect for humans, namely mortality. Beneficial? The telomere hypothesis of aging postulates that as the telomeres naturally shorten during the lifetime of an individual, a signal or set of signals is given to the cells to cause the cells to cease growing. Senescence. Is that right? Senescence. There you go.
Yeah.
At birth, human telomeres are about 10,000 base pairs long, but by 100 years of age, this has been reduced to about 5,000 base pairs. Telomerase is actually an enzyme, a catalytic protein, that is able to arrest or reverse this shortening process. Normally, telomerase is only used to increase the length of telomeres during the formation of sperm and perhaps eggs, thus ensuring that our offspring inherit long, young telomeres to propagate the species. Mackie.
During the replication process, the spiral DNA molecule must split in half and reassemble a copy of itself. Protecting the vital DNA molecule from being copied out of sync, telomeres provide a kind of buffer zone where misalignments, which are inevitable, will not result in any of the important DNA code being lost. Perhaps the best analogy is to compare the telomeres to the white margin surrounding an important typewritten document. In this analogy, the printed text is the vital DNA code, while the white space is the blank telomeres. Imagine that this paper is repeatedly slapped on a copy machine. A copy is made, and then that copy is used to make another copy, and so forth. Each time the paper is subject to errors of alignment, and these errors accumulate. After enough copying, it is probable that the white space will diminish, and some of the actual text will not be copied. That's what happens inside our cells, and it is the reason we get old and die. As any cell gets older, it is under attack by oxides and free radicals in the body and environment. We survive as living beings because our cells have the ability to duplicate and replace themselves before being killed by these natural causes. Each time our cells divide, the DNA molecule makes a new copy of itself. But the procedure is very complex and not perfect. Usually a small portion of the DNA molecule is lost, misaligned, and not copied. Since these errors are more frequent on the ends of the DNA molecule, this area, the telomere, does not contain any important DNA information, and the effect is insignificant. Dave?
Telomeres programmed to die. What a lovely title. Scientists observed that the length of telomere change becomes shorter as we grow older. Eventually, the telomeres become so short that cell replication produces lethal errors or missing pieces of DNA sequence, ending the cell's ability to replicate itself. This point, when the cells have lost vital DNA code and cannot reproduce, is called the Hayflick limit. It's the measure of how many times a cell can copy itself before it dies. Some cells in our body have a very high Hayflick limit. Cells that line the inside of your mouth, as Mackie said earlier, and intestines, for example, are constantly being worn away and replaced. Indeed, these cells appear to have the ability to regrow telomeres even in aged bodies. Scientists were curious why some cells shut down telomere growth with age and some do not. Dr. Langmore used physical, biochemical, and genetic techniques to study the structure and function of telomeres. His group developed a cell-free system to reconstitute functional model telomeres using synthetic DNA and studied a mechanism by which telomeres normally stabilize chromosomes and how shortening of the telomeres could cause instability. The protein factors responsible for stabilizing the ends of chromosomes are being identified, cloned, and studied. Electron microscopy is used to directly visualize the structure of the model telomeres. Dr. Langmore's group used new enzymatic assays to determine the structure of telomere DNA in all normal and abnormal cells grown in vivo and in vitro in order to address specific hypotheses about the role of telomeres in aging and cancer. Scientists have discovered an important enzyme that can turn the telomere production on the DNA molecule on and off. It's called telomerase. Not surprisingly, it seems that as we get older, the amount of telomerase in our cells decreases. Mackie.
Brings us to the cancer problem, as we discussed. Usually, if a cell makes an error in copying itself, the error will prevent the cell from duplicating itself in the future, so the mistake is limited. But with cancer, cells with errors somehow turn on the production of telomerase and make the mutant cell immortal. Now aberrant cells can reproduce unchecked and outlive normal cells. This is the process that creates tumors. Now listen very carefully here and you tell me if there's a logical flaw in the argument. Since we all have mutant precancerous cells in our bodies, nature has decided to shut off the telomerase as we age, thus preventing these mutant cells from growing telomeres. It's a kind of programmed death, a trade-off to reduce our lifespan in order to save us from being riddled with tumors. Nevertheless, some precancerous cells manage to reactivate their telomeres, and this has caused the research to focus more on blocking telomere production rather than trying to extend it. Anti-cancer researchers believe that by introducing a molecule to block this groove, the telomerase would become unable to attach itself to DNA and thereby limit the length of telomere production. While this work holds hope for stopping tumor cells from reproducing forever, it does little to extend healthy cells from being rejuvenated. However, if the molecular blocker could specifically target only cancerous cells without blocking telomerase activity in healthy cells, it could be a step towards human life extension if and when a pharmaceutical can be developed that activates telomerase in the human body. Don't think we need a pharmaceutical, but you saw the flaw in the logic here.
Mm-hmm.
We all have mutant precancerous cells. Yes, we do, and there are different reasons they come about, but they certainly come about because we age, and the copy process is no longer accurate, and we start to have cells that are now damaged and are in a precancerous state and can turn into cancer because the copying process was not good or good enough, and that happens because telomerase is not there. So this argument doesn't hold water. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah? Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, it would make sense if they said the body switches off telomerase in all cells that become precancerous or mutate. That would make sense, because you don't want those cells to live forever and replicate. That would make perfect sense. But shutting it off everywhere and thus increasing the chance of cancer incidence makes no sense at all. Right? But that's exactly what's happening. And not only that, these mutant precancerous cells manage to turn telomerase back on. So all cancers are turning it back on. That's the nature of a cancer. Not some, but all cancers turn on telomerase. Right? So if it was the body's defense mechanism, it would make a lot more sense if a mutant cell is detected. The body goes, oh, geez, there's a mutant cell, could be precancerous. Shut off telomerase. Okay. Yes, makes sense. Not, we're 25, shut off all telomerase except in the mouth and lower intestine and reproductive organs. Makes no sense. Literally, it's a flawed logical argument. I'm sorry. Again, I'm happy to be corrected. Anybody knows better than me, let me know. I'm always happy to learn. Where am I understanding something incorrectly? Let me know. The cancer problem, as stated above, in my opinion, represents a fallacious argument. First of all, nature decides nothing unless we have now moved into a creationist pagan parallel universe. Nature is an abstraction we use to describe biological, chemical, and physiological processes. You cannot have it both ways. Either there's a creative force that makes decisions, or there is not. Cancer develops with healthy cells when healthy cells accumulate errors in the cell division process, something that telomerase is meant to prevent. So why does the body switch telomerase off? What are the advantages, biologically speaking, of doing that? In essence, what we have just shared with you means that we have a built-in kill switch. Why do we have a built-in kill switch? That should be the next question. Why? This is the official scientific explanation. Okay? Please read or listen carefully to see if you can spot the deceit. Okay? Telomeres and cell division. Telomeres are protective caps at the end of chromosomes. They shorten with each cell division. Telomerase's role. Telomerase can rebuild telomeres, allowing cells to divide indefinitely. In most adult cells, this enzyme is largely inactive. Why repress telomerase? Cancer prevention. Turning off telomerase helps prevent cancer by limiting the number of cell divisions and reducing the chance of mutations accumulating and causing uncontrolled growth. Aging. While telomerase repression prevents cancer, it also leads to telomere shortening, which eventually triggers cellular senescence, which is cell death, and contributes to aging. Hayflick limit. The Hayflick limit is the number of times a cell can divide before telomeres become too short and cellular senescence, cell death, is triggered. Telomerase and cancer. Cancer cells often reactivate telomerase, allowing them to bypass the Hayflick limit and divide indefinitely. And there's the music. Do we see the logical flaw here? Maybe, yes.
I do, Mickey. It's okay. This is the end of Shiny Side Out for this week. Catch us Tuesday and Thursday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Time in the US for Plato's Cave, and we'll see you again next week for Shiny Side Out. But in the meantime, Mickey,
be safe.
True.